When I was 17, I did something that was probably the bravest and most foolish thing I had ever done in my life. I wrote a love letter to Liam. Liam, just mentioning his name was enough to send a ripple of excitement through an entire hallway of girls. He was the most popular guy, the campus god of high school #1. A year ahead of me, he was an almost perfect existence. He stood at 1.85 meters, with a sculpted physique and a face as handsome as a painting. Most captivating were his deep eyes, which always held a hint of distant coolness. It wasn't just his looks. His academic achievements consistently placed him at the top of his senior class. He was the pride of our teachers and the secret crush of countless girls. And then there was me, Summer, just an ordinary 11th grade girl lost in the vast universe that was high school #1. I wasn't strikingly beautiful, my grades were merely decent, and my personality leaned towards introversion. Compared to Liam, who shone as brightly as the sun, I was just a tiny, nameless star in the night sky. But love, it seems, knows no reason. I had fallen for him in 10th grade. When I was just a nervous freshman entering the school, he was already a renowned senior. The first time I saw him was when he stood on stage, receiving an award for outstanding student. The afternoon sun streamed through the window that day, casting a faint halo around him. The moment he softly smiled, my heart completely skipped a beat. For nearly 2 years, I quietly followed his shadow, gathering every tiny piece of information about him, sharing his joys and sorrows from afar. That secret love was like a seed, silently taking root and sprouting. And now, as he was about to graduate, it had grown into a large tree that could no longer be hidden. Encouraged by my best friend, I spent a whole week writing a love letter. Every word, every sentence was poured from my heart, from the feelings I had buried deep inside. I described the first time I saw him, the flutter in my heart, and my small efforts to become a better person, just so I could be worthy of standing a little closer to him. I didn't dare hope for a reply. I only wished he would know that there was a girl named Summer who had liked him so very much. That day, I mustered all my courage to intercept him in the school's back courtyard, the place with the fewest people. My heart pounded like a drum, and the light blue letter in my hands was already drenched with sweat. Liam stopped, his cold eyes fixed on me, without a hint of emotion. "Is something wrong?" His voice was deep but carried an infinite distance. Trembling, I held out the letter to him, my head bowed, not daring to meet his gaze. "Liam, I like you." The air seemed to freeze. I could hear the wind rustling through the leaves and the frantic pounding of my own heart. A long moment later, I heard his voice as cold as ice. "I'm sorry, I don't like you." Just a simple sentence, no explanation, no hesitation, like a sharp knife plunging straight into my burning heart. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice, humiliation and pain spreading through my entire body. I didn't even have the courage to lift my head. I just mumbled, "I understand," then turned and ran away like a defeated soldier. The love letter slipped from my hand and fell to the ground, left behind by him without a second glance. In the days that followed, I lived like a shadow. The pain of being publicly rejected, even though only the two of us knew, still made it impossible for me to hold my head high. I tried to avoid him everywhere, telling myself I had to forget this foolish first love. Life seemed destined to continue in bleakness. Until one weekend evening, my mom suddenly called me into the living room, her expression serious but unable to hide her happiness. "Summer, I have something to tell you." My mom, a gentle woman who had raised me alone after my father passed away, took my hand. "I'm getting married." I was stunned for a moment, then burst into joy. Mom had worked so hard. She deserved to be happy. I hugged her tightly, showering her with congratulations. "Really? What kind of person is he, Mom? Can I meet him?" My mom smiled radiantly. "Of course, he's coming to our house for dinner tomorrow evening, and he's bringing his son too. The boy goes to your school, actually. You probably know him." I asked curiously, "What's his name?" "His surname is Collins, his name is Mr. Collins, and his son's name is Liam." The name Liam had barely left my mom's lips when my entire world seemed to crumble. The smile on my face froze. "Liam? Is that him?" Such a coincidence couldn't be real. A feeling of utter absurdity and irrationality overwhelmed me. The Mr. Collins my mom was about to marry was none other than the father of the boy whose confession I had just failed, not long ago. I couldn't sleep that entire night. My mind was a chaotic mess. What was happening? Why him? This meant that he and I were about to become family. The next evening, when the doorbell rang, my heart felt like it would leap out of my chest. My mom happily went to open the door, and then Mr. Collins walked in, followed by a painfully familiar figure. Liam was still the same, still with that cold, distant demeanor. He wore a simple white shirt, yet it still exuded an extraordinary aura. When his gaze swept over me, it paused for just a second, no more, no less, then quickly moved on. As if we were just two strangers who had just met. That dinner was the most agonizing meal of my life. My mom and Mr. Collins chatted happily, constantly serving food to both me and Liam. "Summer, this is Liam. You two must love and care for each other from now on, okay?" my mom said. I could only bow my head and mumble, "Yes, Mom," not daring to look at him. I could feel his gaze occasionally sweep over me, but it held no emotion whatsoever. He played the role of a perfect future older brother very well, occasionally serving me food and asking a few questions about my studies, but I knew it was all an act. Between us was an invisible wall, an unspoken truth that neither of us dared to acknowledge. He had rejected me, and now, ironic fate had destined us to live under the same roof in the guise of siblings. A torrent of mixed feelings, love and hate, pain and awkwardness churned within me, foreshadowing a tumultuous future. A week after that fateful dinner, Mom and I officially moved into the Collins house. It was a spacious two-story villa, a luxurious world I had never dared to dream of. Everything was perfect, except for one thing, Liam's presence. Mr. Collins, who I now had to call Dad, treated me very well. Dad arranged a room for me on the second floor, right next to Liam's. "Your rooms are next to each other," Dad said with a smile, "so it'll be easy to call your brother if you need anything." Dad's warm words felt like an invisible knife cutting into my heart. Next to each other, with only a wall separating us, yet it felt like an untouchable sky. The first few days were a pantomime of awkwardness. We passed each other like two strangers living under the same roof. He maintained his inherent coldness. I told myself I had to bury my secret and my feelings deep down. I just had to wait until he went to college, and we would naturally drift apart. But fate, it seemed, enjoyed playing cruel tricks. It wouldn't let me have peace for even a single day. The incident happened one Saturday afternoon. Dad and Mom were out, leaving just Liam and me at home. I was bustling about in the kitchen when the housekeeper asked me to take a stack of newly arrived reference books up to Liam's room. "Young master is in his room," she said. My heart raced. This was the first time I had a reason to step into his forbidden territory. I took a deep breath, hugging the heavy stack of books as I went upstairs. His door was slightly ajar. I knocked twice softly, but there was no reply. Perhaps he was wearing headphones. I gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was minimally decorated in black and white, eerily clean and organized, just like him, but he wasn't there. Maybe he had gone downstairs without me noticing. I intended to place the books on his desk and leave immediately, but the light from his laptop screen caught my attention. It was still on, displaying a window full of image files. Deadly curiosity. I glanced at it, and then my entire body froze. On the screen were dozens of photos of my mom and me. There were shots at the school gate, at the supermarket, photos of us walking in the park, all taken from a considerable distance. Nothing less than candid, secretly taken pictures. But what horrified me most was the creation date of these files. All of them were dated 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, that was even before I gathered the courage to confess to him. My mind went blank. Why did he have these photos? Was he stalking my mom and me? For what purpose? Thousands of chaotic questions swirled in my mind, but not a single logical answer presented itself. The feeling wasn't one of clarity after discovering the truth, but rather a vague fear slowly creeping in. What was his intention in investigating us? My hands trembled violently, the books in my grasp slipped, crashing onto the floor with a resounding thud. Just then, the bathroom door burst open and Liam stepped out, his hair still dripping wet. He was only wrapped in a towel around his waist, revealing his toned chest and perfect muscles. He frowned at the messy pile of books on the floor, then looked at me. His eyes immediately sharpened when he saw me frozen in front of his computer. "Who allowed you in here?" His voice dropped, cold and dangerous. He strode quickly towards me. The alluring scent of masculine shower gel hit my nose, but I only felt a suffocating sensation. He didn't look at me but quickly glanced at the laptop screen before decisively snapping it shut. A gesture meant to conceal, to bury everything. "You," I stammered, "those pictures. Why do you have them?" "It's none of your business." He cut me off, his voice devoid of emotion, but fear and confusion had overridden everything else. I gathered all my courage and looked straight into his dangerous eyes. "Why are you following my mom and me? What are you planning to do?" He suddenly smirked, a chillingly frightening smile. He leaned down, close to my ear, his voice a whisper like a warning. "Summer, there are some things you're better off not knowing. Don't forget your place, you are my asterisk sister asterisk." The two words, my sister, were emphasized like an unyielding fortress, blocking all my attempts to seek the truth. He straightened up, took a step back, his eyes alien and warning. "Never enter my room without permission again, and never be curious about things that don't concern you." With that, he turned his back, giving me no chance to say anything more. I stumbled out of his cold room, my heart aching and fearful. I hadn't found the truth. Instead, I felt myself drowning in an even more terrifying secret. Not only had he rejected me, but he was also hiding something. And that secret seemed directly connected to my mom and me. After that horrifying afternoon in Liam's room, my life in the Collins house completely changed. This house was no longer just an unfamiliar and awkward place to live. It had transformed into a gilded cage, and he was the cold, cruel jailer. His previous indifference was now replaced by an invisible yet oppressive surveillance. Every action I made seemed to be within his watchful eye. Dinner became a psychological torture. I could feel his gaze sweep over me when I answered a friend's call or when I subtly smiled reading a message. He said nothing, but his silence was more terrifying than 1,000 words. It was like a constant reminder. "I'm watching you." I lived in fear and confusion. The secret of those secretly taken photos weighed heavily on my mind like a stone. Why did he do that? What did he want from my mom and me? Was his rejection that year part of some unimaginable plan? The more I thought, the more I felt Liam was a bottomless abyss-com on the surface, but concealing dangerous undercurrents within. The Cold War between us continued, until one Friday evening, it officially erupted. It was my best friend's birthday that day. Our group had planned to go to karaoke. I knew that, given the current situation, asking Liam for permission was impossible. Mom and Dad had been away on a business trip since early morning, so I decided to sneak out. At 8:00 p.m., I changed into a pretty dress, put on light makeup, then tiptoed downstairs with my bag, trying not to make a sound. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, an icy voice rang out from behind me, making me jump. "Where are you going?" I spun around. Liam was standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed over his chest, his entire being exuding an oppressive aura. He had changed from his school uniform into a casual gray loungewear set, which made him seem less distant but added several layers of danger. I'm going to a friend's birthday party," I mumbled, not daring to meet his eyes. "Which friend? What time will you be back?" he pressed, his tone like an adult interrogating a child. His unreasonable control made the resentment and fear I had long suppressed flare up. I looked up at him defiantly. "This is my personal business. It doesn't concern you." He smirked, a mocking smile. "Personal business, Summer. You're living in the Collins house, bearing the name of my sister. Your actions, whether you like it or not, concern me." He walked towards me, each step pounding directly into my chest. He stopped right in front of me, the distance so close I could feel his breath. "Stay home. You're not going anywhere." "Why?" I shrieked, tears welling up in my eyes from the injustice. "What right do you have to forbid me? You're not my father." "Right." He snarled, enunciating each word. "I am your brother. When I say no, it's no." His arrogance completely infuriated me. Without another word, I squeezed past him, intending to open the door and leave. But instantly, a firm hand clamped tightly around my wrist. "Let go," I struggled, but his strength was immense. His grip was like an iron vice, squeezing me tight, not letting go. This was the first time we had physical contact since I moved in. The spot where he held my wrist burned, and a strange electric current shot down my spine, making my entire body tremble. This feeling wasn't just fear and anger, there was also a hint of panic and confusion. "Dare to take another step?" He leaned down, close to my face, his voice hoarse with anger. His deep eyes locked onto mine. Inside them was a storm I couldn't comprehend. I saw anger, control, and deep within, a terrifyingly intense possessiveness. Our eyes met, and the space between us seemed to freeze. His breath, carrying a refreshing mint scent, brushed my face. My heart pounded wildly in my chest, not from fear, but from an unnamed, chaotic emotion. I was defeated, utterly vanquished by that gaze. I let my hands fall, giving up the struggle. Seeing that I had submitted, he slowly loosened his grip, but didn't entirely let go. "Go to your room," he commanded, his voice a little softer but still allowing no resistance. I silently turned around, dragging my heavy feet upstairs, overwhelmed by humiliation and helplessness. He walked right behind me. His presence was like a giant shadow, covering my entire world. That night, I lay in bed, but the burning sensation on my wrist lingered. I hated his arrogance, hated his control, but I couldn't deny that in the moment he grabbed my hand, in the moment he looked at me with that possessive gaze, a deep part of my heart had shamefully stirred. The fear of his secret was now intertwined with another fear. I was afraid of myself. Afraid that, under his oppression and control, my foolish, one-sided feelings wouldn't just die, but would instead mutate, becoming something forbidden and infinitely more dangerous. The Cold War after that night became even more suffocating. We barely spoke a word to each other. The atmosphere in the house was constantly thick, as if on the verge of freezing. I deliberately ignored him, while he, in turn, monitored me even more closely. He didn't speak, but used only his eyes. His deep gaze was like an invisible net, enveloping me everywhere, making it impossible for me to escape. This tension continued until one late autumn afternoon, when the sky suddenly unleashed a torrential downpour. I stood under the eaves of the school gate, watching the heavy raindrops pound against the ground, a feeling of helplessness rising within me. I had forgot my umbrella and my phone was dead. I could only stand there, waiting in vain. All my friends had gone home, the schoolyard was deserted, with only the relentless sound of the falling rain. As I shivered from the cold, a familiar black car slowly pulled up right in front of me. The car window rolled down, revealing Liam's expressionless face. My heart skipped a beat. Was he here to pick me up? "Get in," he commanded, his voice as cold as ever. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't want to give in, didn't want to accept his pity. But the rain grew heavier by the minute, and the cold wind whipped around me, making me tremble uncontrollably. In the end, reason prevailed. I bit my lip, opened the car door, and sat in the passenger seat. The atmosphere inside the car was even more suffocating than outside. Apart from the rain drumming against the windows and the steady swish of the wipers, there was no other sound. I turned my face to the window, pretending to watch the blurred scenery in the rain, trying to ignore the presence of the person next to me. "Fasten your seatbelt," his voice suddenly broke the silence. I flinched, only then realizing I had forgotten. I fumbled with the seatbelt, but for some reason it got stuck. The more I pulled, the tighter it became. Seeing me struggle, he sighed softly, clearly impatient. He suddenly leaned across me, his entire body almost enveloping mine. His firm chest nearly brushed my shoulder. The familiar mint scent once again filled my nostrils, making my head spin. The proximity was too close, so close I could hear his heartbeat, or perhaps my own. He didn't look at me, focusing only on untangling the stubborn seatbelt. A few strands of his rain-damp hair fell, lightly brushing my cheek, sending a jolt through me. Click! The seatbelt fastened, and he quickly retreated to his seat, as if he had just touched something scalding. "Can't even manage such a small thing," he muttered with a sarcastic edge. Resentment flared in my heart again. "You don't need to care," I retorted coldly. He suddenly slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched on the road, a deafening sound. The car came to a complete halt by the roadside. He turned to look at me, his eyes sharp as knives. "You don't need me to care?" he sneered, but there was no amusement in his eyes. "Summer, do you know who you're talking to? If I hadn't come, how long were you planning to stand in the pouring rain?" "That's my business," I yelled, unable to hold back any longer. "Even if I froze to death out there, it wouldn't concern you. You'd probably be glad. After all, you never liked me anyway." My last words were like a spark igniting a fuse, completely shattering Liam's self-control. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He stared straight ahead, his voice hoarse with suppressed pain. "Yes, I said I didn't like you." He paused for a moment, then turned to look directly into my eyes, his gaze as deep as a raging ocean. "But I never said it was the truth." My entire body froze. What do you mean by that?" "What do I mean?" He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "It means that before the day you gave me that love letter, I already knew my father and your mother were about to get married. I knew that in just a few days you would become my sister. Tell me, how could I have answered you then? Should I have said I liked you too? And then we would just wait to become siblings. Every word he spoke hit me like a sledgehammer, pounding directly into my mind. The truth I had vaguely suspected, now spoken by his own mouth, carried such devastating power. So those photos, I was investigating, he admitted without hesitation. When I found out my father was dating a woman, I looked into it, and then I found out that woman was your mother. I saw you in the photos with her. I knew you were Summer. The junior girl who was always secretly watching me in the library, on the basketball court, in the hallway. The more he spoke, the more pained his voice became. I had intended to keep my distance, to wait for everything to pass, but you suddenly appeared in front of me with that love letter. Do you know how much strength it took for me to say those words? I don't like you? Tears began to stream down my face. Everything had become clear. His coldness, his control, his contradictions, they all had a reason. It wasn't that he hated me, it was that he couldn't love me. Seeing me cry, the anger in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by heartache and helplessness. He raised his hand, his long, slender fingers gently wiping away a tear on my cheek. That soft touch made my entire body tremble. Don't cry, his voice softened, husky, but I couldn't stop. This truth was too cruel. Without another word, he suddenly pulled me into his arms, leaned down, and kissed my lips. His kiss was far from gentle. It carried anger, helplessness, yearning, and all the pain he had suppressed for so long. He kissed fiercely, as if wanting to pour out every emotion into that kiss, as if wanting to prove to me that his feelings were real. My mind went blank. I forgot to resist, forgot our identities. I only knew that my cold heart was being warmed by this kiss. I closed my eyes, clumsily responding to him. Outside, the rain still poured relentlessly. Inside this small car, two lonely hearts, two bound souls, finally crossed the forbidden boundary. From this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. That kiss in the cramped car was like a match thrown into the gunpowder keg that had long been tightly packed between Liam and me. It exploded, shattering all barriers, all suppressions, all reason. After breaking away from that passionate and desperate kiss, we were both breathless. Neither of us said a word. He restarted the car, silently driving us home. But this silence was entirely different. It was no longer the cold, distant silence of a Cold War, but a suffocating quiet filled with unnamed emotions, confusion, and a guilty secret that we had just created together. Arriving home, we stepped out of the car almost simultaneously. Under the soft yellow light of the porch lamp, I could finally see his face clearly. His usual cold demeanor had vanished, replaced by exhaustion and a subtle, almost unnoticeable tenderness. His lips were slightly swollen, just like mine. I started to say something, but didn't know where to begin. Go to your room, he cut me off, his voice hoarse. Let's pretend nothing happened today. With that, he turned and walked into the house first, leaving me standing there, forlorn, with a heart tangled like yarn. Nothing happened? How could that be? That kiss, that confession, had been etched deep into my mind. How could it ever be erased? That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned on the large bed, my mind filled with images of him, his kiss, his pained eyes, and his contradictory words. Let's pretend nothing happened. Was he regretting it? Was he trying to push me away again? When the clock struck midnight, I couldn't bear it anymore. I tiptoed out of my room and stood before his door. I hesitated, wondering whether to knock or not. Just then, the door suddenly opened from the inside. Liam stood there, still in his loungewear, his eyes complex as he looked at me. I knew you'd come, he said, his voice deep. Without waiting for my reply, he pulled my hand into his room and quickly closed the door. The room was illuminated only by the faint light of a bedside lamp. He pushed me against the wall, his hands on either side, trapping me between his chest and the cold surface. Why don't you listen? He leaned down, his forehead almost touching mine. I told you to pretend nothing happened. I can't. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice trembling. Liam, tell me the truth. Are you regretting it? Do you want to push me away again? He didn't answer, just quietly looked at me. In the dim light, I saw torment in his eyes, pain, and an undeniable yearning. He slowly leaned down and kissed my lips. This time, his kiss was no longer as forceful as it had been in the car, but incredibly gentle, lingering like an apology, a compensation. Fool, he whispered as he broke the kiss. How could I regret it? I've waited for this day for so long. He pulled me into a tight embrace, as if wanting to embed me into his body. But Summer, do you know what we're doing? This is a path with no escape. Are you scared? I buried my face in his warm chest, shaking my head. As long as I'm with you, I'm not afraid of anything. It was a lie. Of course, I was scared. I was afraid of our parents finding out, afraid of society's gossip, afraid of a bleak future with no way out. But that fear became insignificant compared to the thought of losing him again. From that night on, we began a clandestine relationship. During the day, in front of our parents, we were still exemplary siblings. He remained a distant older brother, occasionally asking me a few questions about my studies. I was still a polite, obedient younger sister. We performed a perfect play without a single flaw. But when night fell, when the entire house was deep in slumber, that was our true world. His room became our secret rendezvous point. We would watch a movie together, listen to music, or simply embrace without saying a word. He would patiently explain lessons to me, gently dry my hair, do all the things a boyfriend should do. With him, I felt a completely different Liam, no longer a cold, distant campus god, but a warm, gentle guy, sometimes even a little childish and domineering. He had an intense possessiveness over me. He wouldn't allow me to talk too intimately with other male friends, would check my phone, and would get jealous over the smallest things. I knew it was wrong, but I greedily reveled in that possessiveness because it gave me a sense of security. It let me know that he truly cared about me. This relationship was like walking a tightrope, sweet, thrilling, but also fraught with danger. Every time we heard footsteps in the hallway, our hearts would pound as if wanting to leap out of our chests. Every time our parents suddenly asked about our sibling relationship, we had to try our best to stay calm so as not to reveal any cracks. We were building a secret paradise together, an oasis of happiness in a forbidden desert. But we both knew this paradise was too fragile. With just a slight breeze, it could crumble at any moment. Our secret paradise lasted for nearly 2 months, right up until Liam's university entrance exams. It was the sweetest yet most stressful period. During the day, I tried not to disturb him, quietly preparing snacks and warm milk for him. At night, when the whole house was fast asleep, I would sneak into his room, not for a rendezvous, but just to sit beside him, silently watching him study under the lamp. My presence seemed to be the best tranquilizer for him. On the last night before the exam, he stopped studying. He pulled me into his lap, rested his head on my shoulder, inhaling the scent of my hair. "I'm so tired." His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. "Hang in there, just one more day." I wrapped my arms around his neck, gently comforting him. "Summer," he suddenly called my name. "After the exams, let's tell Mom and Dad everything, okay? I don't want you to suffer, to have to love secretly like this anymore. I'll take responsibility for you." My heart trembled. Take responsibility. Those 2 words were heavy, yet strangely sweet. I knew this day would come sooner or later. I nodded, burying my face in his chest. "I'll wait for you." But we didn't get the chance to tell them ourselves. Fate decided to do it for us in the cruelest possible way. That dawn, around 4 a.m., I secretly left his room to return to mine before everyone woke up. But just as I opened his door, a figure standing frozen in the hallway made me stop dead in my tracks. It was my mom. She stood there, a glass of water in her hand. Her usually kind face was now pale, her eyes staring at me not with anger, but with shock, pain, and disbelief. The glass of water in her hand fell, shattering on the floor, the deafening sound echoing in the silent space, just like my heart at that moment. "Summer, Summer," Mom stammered. "Why are you in your brother's room?" Liam, hearing the noise, also rushed out. When he saw the scene before him, his face also changed color. Everything was exposed. Dad was also woken by the commotion. When he saw the 3 of us standing there, saw my mom's stunned face and the panic in both Liam and me, he seemed to understand everything. His usually warm face turned icy cold. He didn't say a word, just stared at Liam, his eyes full of disappointment and anger. The interrogation took place in the living room, the air so heavy I could barely breathe. My mom just sat there crying, while Dad paced back and forth in front of us, his face dark. "When did this start?" His voice was terrifyingly low. I, frightened, kept my head down, not daring to speak. Just then, Liam suddenly squeezed my hand. He pulled me behind him, facing his father's wrath alone. "It's my fault," he said, his voice incredibly calm and firm. "I forced her. Summer is not to blame." "If you want to blame someone, blame only me." "Forced her," Dad sneered, a furious laugh. "Do you think I'm a fool, Liam? I've always been proud of you. But today you've disappointed me deeply. Do you know she's your sister?" "She is not," Liam suddenly snarled. Legally, we are not blood relatives. Emotionally, I love her. I have never thought of her as my sister. You, Dad was so furious he raised his hand, intending to slap him. Go ahead and hit me. Liam didn't flinch. But after you hit me, please listen. I'm an adult, I know what I'm doing. My love for Summer is genuine. I will take responsibility for her. Take responsibility? With what are you going to take responsibility? Dad roared. I will never accept this absurd relationship. Either you two break it off immediately or you get out of this house. Everyone was stunned by his words. I burst into sobs while my mom quickly pleaded, Darling, don't be angry, let's talk about this calmly. There's nothing to talk about, Dad cut her off. I cannot let my son do something so disruptive and ruin our family's reputation. In the midst of the chaos, Liam suddenly spoke, his voice clear and resolute. All right, I'll go. He turned to look at me, his eyes incredibly gentle. Summer, trust me, wait for me. With that, he turned and walked straight upstairs to his room without a moment's hesitation. 15 minutes later, he came back down, dressed in his school uniform. He wore a simple backpack. He didn't even bring a suitcase. He walked up to Mom and Dad, bowing deeply. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for disappointing you both, but I don't regret loving her. I'm going to take my exam now. Then he walked to me, gently wiped my tears. Don't cry, wait for me at home. He turned and left, his back straight, resolute, never looking back. That day, he completed his exam with flying colors. And he didn't come home. He rented a small room near the school and began an independent life. Dad had cut off all financial support, but he wasn't discouraged. He tutored, worked part-time at a coffee shop, and covered all his expenses himself. The Cold War between him and Dad lasted for several months. During that time, my mom stayed by Dad's side, trying to persuade him. She told him about our sincere feelings, about Liam's steadfastness and responsibility. Gradually, Dad's anger subsided. Everything truly changed the day Liam received his acceptance letter to a top-tier national university. That evening, Dad drove himself to Liam's small rented room. No one knew what the father and son discussed. We only knew that when Liam returned home, Dad's eyes were red-rimmed. He didn't say he agreed, nor did he say he opposed. He just said one sentence to us, "Your future is yours, hold on to it yourselves." It was a silent acceptance. 4 years later, I stood nervously waiting at the airport. A tall, familiar figure emerged from the arrival gate. Liam was now a 22-year-old man, much more mature and composed. He wore a white shirt, his charismatic aura still as striking as ever. He saw me, smiled gently, then strode quickly towards me. He embraced me tightly, a strong hug after so many days apart. I'm home, he said. I buried my face in his chest, feeling his familiar scent. Welcome back, I whispered. We had spent 4 years of college in 2 different cities. Our feelings not only hadn't faded but had grown deeper. Our parents had also gradually accepted our relationship. On the way home, he suddenly pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it, and inside was a dazzling diamond ring. Summer, he looked at me, his eyes sincere and earnest. Will you marry me? Happy tears flowed once again. I nodded rapidly. Yes, I will. He slipped the ring onto my finger and then sealed it with a kiss. Our love story began with a rejection. After enduring countless storms, it had finally reached a peaceful harbor. The road ahead might still be full of thorns, but as long as I had him by my side, I wouldn't fear anything anymore.